purpose of this video is to better define the purpose of abstract objects as they relate to dialectics, and how we can better define abstract objects to streamline sense-making, dialectics, and conversation. To comprehend this video, you'll first need to have a basic understanding of abstract objects, dialectics, and standard deviation. I won't explain those terms here, but within a few minutes of Googling, you'll be good to go. I've included the links to Wikipedia for each of these subjects in the description of this video below. A very large portion of disagreement during argument and dialectics comes from two parties using the same word to mean different things. Consider this as an example. You say, "Cats are small," but your friend says, "Not necessarily." Well, what really happened right here? Well, in this fictional scenario, when you say cats are all small, you're not talking about your cat. You're not talking about your neighbor's cat. And you're not even really talking about all cats you've ever seen. What you're referring to is a mental model you created that allows you to think about cats in general. This mental model allows you to assume things and make predictions about actual, real-life cats by using only the power of your imagination. In metaphysics, these mental models are referred to as abstract objects. Right now, I'm coining the term subjective abstract objects. More on that later, though. Back to the matter at hand. The abstract object you're thinking about when you say cat includes only house cats, but the abstract object that your friend has in her head includes large cats, such as lions, tigers, and cheetahs. It's not that you think lions and tigers are small, and it's not that your friend thinks house cats are large. The problem here is that even though you are using the same word, you each have to rely on your own subjective abstract object. Your friend's subjective abstract object includes big cats. Yours does not. At least, not at this moment. And so you disagree not on the substance, but on the definition of the word cat. As you can see, this relatively trivial argument is easily solved. But this problem begins to get much more serious and weightier when discussing politics, macroeconomics, human rights, and other similarly high-level and broad subjects. But how do we solve this problem? How can we have more useful, pointed dialectics that allow us to reach our goals? It is my personal opinion that a very large portion, and quite possibly the majority of disagreements, occur because of disparity between every individual's subjective abstract objects. In the illustration depicted here, you see 5 people and a word that they all understand, cat. This word maps to 5 separate subjective abstract objects. Notice that everyone understands the word cat, but when they hear the word cat, they all map the word to their own subjective abstract object. Now, with most abstracts, and especially small ones, they are going to be very similar to each other. But the larger an abstract is, the more difficult it becomes to reconcile multiple people's independent abstract objects. To come one step closer to bridging the gap between subjective abstract objects, we are going to explicitly define important aspects of abstract objects and use a small amount of math to create what we are going to call an objective abstract object. Let's define some terms. First, we have people. There are 5 people in this illustration here, and they all understand the word cat. So we have people, and then we have a word. For each person, this word maps to their own subjective abstract object. The next thing we are going to define is a group. A group is simply a group of people who all have subjective abstract objects. You could have a small group of just the people at your office, or you could have a large group of everyone in the world. You'll see why group size matters as we move on. Notice the letter P inside each abstract object. The letter P represents the number of properties a subjective abstract object has. A property of an abstract object can be pretty much anything. Let's take this first person and their abstract object as an example. This guy here, here's the word cat, and he maps it to this abstract object over here on the left. This person has a subjective abstract object that contains 5 properties. These five properties might be has fur, has claws, likes eating fish, is small, and makes a good pet. So when this person hears the word cat, he maps it to his subjective abstract object, and this object can be defined as the sum of its properties. This person's subjective abstract object has 5 properties, and so we say it has a size of 5. Let's talk about the A now. A stands for average uniqueness. Notice that the first person's subjective abstract object has an A value of 2. That means the average uniqueness of his abstract object among the group in question, these 5 people here, is 2. A high A value means that your subjective abstract object is very different from other people's subjective abstract object in the same group. A low A value means that your subjective abstract object has very few unique properties when compared to other people's subjective abstract object. I'm getting tired of saying subjective abstract object, so I'm going to say SAO from now on. Let's talk about objective abstract objects now. Objective abstract objects are basically just abstract objects that show the average value of all the SAO in a given group. For instance, an objective abstract object with a high variability means that lots of the subjective abstract objects have many unique properties when compared to all the other subjective abstract objects. A large size just means that on average, all the SAOs in a group have a lot of properties. A large size standard deviation just means that the SAOs in a given group vary wildly in the number of properties they have. Being able to picture an objective abstract object is important because it allows you to avoid potential problems when speaking with other people. Now, you're of course not going to be calculating the variability and size of objective abstract objects every time you use certain words that map to these objective abstract objects. In fact, doing so is rarely feasible. The purpose of picturing variability and size is so that you can be more conscious of these considerations when engaging in a true dialectic discourse. If you start arguing with someone about feminism and are struggling to come to an agreement, that's an important time to realize that the word feminism maps to an objective abstract object that has a very large size and has high variability. Once you realize that this problem exists, it's likely that you'll be able to have a more fruitful discourse with your conversation partner. Here are some rules to keep in mind when it comes to abstract objects and their use in dialectics. Number 1, use small abstract objects. Number 2, use abstract objects with low variability. Number 3, use abstract objects with low size standard deviation. Number 4, when possible, define your subjective abstract object. Number 5, ask questions about your partner's subjective abstract object. I'm hoping the model I've just outlined will be very useful for people trying to engage in honest discussion. Remember, just because we use the same words doesn't mean we're talking about the same thing.